What's up, Ionics, and welcome back to the kinda second part of a quick win about handling data and passing around data in your Ionic applications using Angular. In the first part of this video, we worked on a simple application and used the basic routing concepts, sending data through the URL in different states, sending data back when you navigate back, and stuff like that. Today, we're gonna focus on something else, that is nested routes. We're gonna look at passing around data using Ionic modals in both directions. We're gonna take a look at child components and how to handle data with that. And in the end, also a very simple approach to handling state in your application that you can follow along. In terms of following along, code will linked below the video to the quick win, available for all Ionic Academy members. And you already know it. If you're not yet a member of the Ionic Academy, go check it out right now. ionicacademy.com, my place to help you with everything Ionic. So let's dive into some cool patterns for sending data in your Ionic application. Alright, let's get into our application. We can get started with a blank new Ionic application. And there are different commands that will show you during the different sections of this video. So first of all, you can actually get started by creating 4 new pages. We can then change our app routing because we want to create something like nested routes. Basically, what this is, as we can see, we have one page which is a lists page. Then we might have to dive into the details of one of those lists using a placeholder in here. And then within that list, we might once again have some items, and then we want to dive into the specific item ID. And we can do this perfectly fine using the Angular router. As you can see, having something like this in here is no problem at all. With that being said, it kind of looks a bit strange. So what I might recommend is actually, well, what would I do? I would actually move everything from here down. So those 3 elements into the actual lists routing file. So within here we have the path for the general lists page, and then we could have multiple children for the routing. I think that can usually be a bit better in terms of readability. It's no difference to the Angular router. If you structure it correctly, in the end, it's gonna be the same. So I'm just gonna start with this example as it's pretty straightforward. I just wanna show you that it's definitely possible. So let's open our home page now and put in a few buttons, and all of them will start, oh, please, come on. I definitely need to change my editor config. I don't know what's going on, but HTML, let's make this 150. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, sorry about that. So we have the router link to lists, lists using an ID, also going to items, also going to items with an ID. And all of that will work just fine. So lists, list details, items, and item details. And on that page, we're completely able to access all the parameters that we have right here in the route. Now, how does this work? Let's simply go to the last page, which is the item details page. And you see, it's the same procedure that we use if we're just on a regular details page. So if you're within a nested routing context, you get access to all the values of the IDs right here, just like we always access them. List ID, item ID, exactly the placeholders that we used here, list ID, item ID. So you could have more or however many you want to have in there. Now, on top of that, there is the possibility to make this kinda dynamic. And I've done this before within a tutorial right here where we've used a file explorer. So in that case, we only actually used one folder path, and then this value was simply constructed with slashes. So in the end, you are accessing like home/documents/videos/ whatever. And this part would then, from the logic restructure. So basically, we were always accessing the same homepage and only from code accessing the different path of our route snapshot, as we can see right here, current folder, So we had additional logic. Check this out. The Capacitor file explorer shows this pretty nicely. Now let's move on to something else, and that is working with modals. We can close most of the things. What we need right now is one additional modal, and then we can head over to our home page. So we first of all need to, of course, inject the modal controller. There we go. And then let's present a nice little modal like this. Modal page, import, and then we're done. If we simply want to pass data from our page to the modal, we can use the component properties. We can set it like this. You can pass in any kind of information in here, and I'm going to show you in a second how to access them. For now, let's quickly change this. Let's make this click show modal. I'm going to remove the rest and call this one open modal. Maybe we're going to do this side by side now, simply so you see the refresh going on. We gotta also go back to the initial page. There we go. All right, so within our homepage, we're already opening the modal. Most likely it comes up. So let's see how on that modal page we are now able to access the values. And the easiest way to do this is to define inputs. So we can use the Angular annotation add input. We can import this from Angular core, and then we define all the inputs that we might need on that page. So I've added user ID and filter, and that's exactly what we pass with the component properties. As a result, we could now easily log out our values, our user ID and the filter. So let's see this. User 42 filter true. And that is the whole magic of well, using inputs and passing data to this page. But that is of course only one way. There's also another way, and that is from the modal page itself back to the parent who called that page. Sometimes you need to pass data in that case as well. So let's see how we can do this. In fact, it's pretty easy. The dismiss function for a modal, which I should maybe connect to a button on the modal page. Let's quickly do this before I continue. So ion buttons, slot start, and ion button click, close. Ion icon name. I really need a shortcut for this close stuff. I'm sure we could create a snippet for that. Slot icon only, because for the modal it's really so often completely the same code. Okay, now I can close my modal. That's cool. Now what I want to do with that close is within the dismiss block we can actually pass some options. I will just say my return value whatever. Really, you could have anything you want in this dismiss block. And the important part is now catching this on your page right here where you present the modal. So let's get this by destructuring the data from the modal. You can either use on did dismiss or on will dismiss. Sometimes this depends really on the situation you're in. In terms of data, both are I think should return the same data. Yeah. So let's close this, and we see data after modal closed. My return value 42. Well, let's actually give this a try on what did we use? On did dismiss, on will dismiss. Okay, yeah, it's just completely the same if you're using on will dismiss or on did dismiss. And you got the data now right here, and you could perform anything you want with the data from the modal. Now that is pretty cool. We have static sending data with the component properties. We can retrieve it with this functionality. Now there's one more thing if you want to do this live, basically. And to do this, I found a pretty cool and kind of easy solution, and that includes using a subject. So let's see how this works. We simply create a new behavior subject up front here. You could also use a different kind of subject, but a behavior subject is pretty cool as it has an initial value You can also set the initial value to null or whatever you want. And then we're gonna pass this into our modal. So now it's getting interesting. That means now on the modal page, we also need an input for our behavior subject. So let's define this. Oops, no, that's definitely not what I want. Go back. There we go. Okay, there we go. And now let's just do it really easy. And within the ng on init, after a timeout of 2 seconds, we're gonna emit a new value on our subject. So we've used this in different state-like solutions before. You can have a subject, you can emit new values. It works pretty nice with authentication tokens or actually any kind of data you want to send around in your application and just subscribe to the state. So that is broadcasting or emitting a new value on our behavior subject. And our homepage now simply needs to subscribe to this subject. So let's do this. We subscribe to the subject and we log the new value whenever we get values back. So let's see how this looks in reality. If we click open, we get a new value, and after 2 seconds we get another value. Now the first value simply comes because that's the initial value of the subject. If you don't like that, simply put in a pipe and then do something like this: filter data, making sure the data is defined, and then importing the filter. You see Angular and RxJS is really easy. You just need 5 imports and then everything works. You just need to know what you need to import. RxJS, operators. Is it in operators? Yeah, let's hope so. Thanks, email. Okay. So now we're filtering out the data. Pipe, filter, data, whatever. Use a different variable. So now we wouldn't get that null log and we would only get this log. I don't know, why did we do this in the first place? You know how a behavior subject and how RxJS works, right? Anyhow, we have now created a connection between the modal and our page. It's not looking super special on the outside, but think about this. If you have a bottom sheet component modal, you could slide this up. You could change the settings in the bottom sheet modal, which is the new Ionic 6 representation for modals. And in the background, your page could immediately update while you make changes in the modal. So then you would really need this active connection if the background page is still visible while you're seeing the modal. I hope that makes sense, and I hope this approach helps you. Next step. For the next part, we need a component, because I want to show you the data connection again between component and parent and how we can react to different things. So first of all, we're gonna create a new module. I'm gonna call this one shared components, and I'm gonna create a new component in that module. Okay, before I forget about this, let's open our homepage where we do all the funny things. And let's put in the shared components module, because we now need to import that module, which will in a second hold our text box component. There we go. And we also need to export the text box component to be used in other pages. Now, because I want to use some Ionic components within this custom component, we also need the Ionic module and also the forms module, since I want to use ng modal on that page. Okay, we got that in place. Let's head over to the text box component. And on the text box component, we once again have the two directions. We have bringing data in from the parent and sending data back to the parent. Bringing data in from the parent is handled once again using input, just like we did on the modal. Bringing data out of it is done by using the output decorator and declaring an event emitter. Now be careful to import this from Angular core, otherwise you will get really strange issues. Now the whole idea of this component is to set a title from the outside, have a text field in here, and whenever the text field changes, we want to tell the parent component about the changes. So what we want to do is when the input changes, we emit a new value just like we did on the subject before. So you see everything comes together, streams are everywhere in observables. In that case, we emit our new value. Now the component itself is really pretty easy. Oops, that's definitely the wrong file. We want to go here. So it's an item. We have a label which will display the title that we get from the parent. And the input is connected to our myText variable. And on change, we want to call the input change, which will use the event emitter to send that data back to our parent. Now, on the home page, they will want to keep this. I'll just comment it out for now. So what we want to do in here is we want to also present this. We could also just do this with a log message, but for the fun of it, let's add a new function that will simply set our value here whenever it is called. Now, the important part is that first, of course, you import the module like we did before. And second, that we use the component in the right kind of way, which is this. No, I don't want this. I just wanted to make this bigger. So here we got the component app text box. We know it's like this. You can check out the component. It's the selector of the component. Then we inject the title. This could be anything, could be a variable, could be whatever we want. Just injecting for the input field. And then we're subscribing or we're triggering a function based on the output event emitter that we defined on the component. So whenever the text in the component changes, our function will be called and we're just displaying the value here below. As a result, we see it doesn't, once again, it doesn't look super special. And of course, for this component, it isn't really special, but it completely shows the two-way connection, sending data like my cool input into the child component and reacting to changes from the component to the parent who used or created that component. Now, how far along are we in the video? About 80 minutes. Well, let's do one quick last thing about state management, because in the previous part one of this video, which you definitely check out, link below the video, I mentioned the approach, for example, for going back, using local storage, setting a value, and when you go back, you read that value again. Now, that's of course not the best idea. You might want to use something like a state management library. For example, you could use something like ngxs. There are tons of great state management libraries. But usually, if your application isn't like an enterprise application, things like these feel a bit overkill. Yeah, people might argue once you become confident with these approaches and these concepts, it's pretty easy, but if you look at the code, it's really a lot of boilerplate code that you have to write. Usually what I like is a lot easier approach, and that looks like this. So let's say you want to build a to-do application, any kind of stuff, really. This would be the whole state logic for our application, and the core is once again a behavior subject. You can really do so many things with this. So let's see. We have a service. In fact, I created this service with a let command, so generating a service. And now let's find the service, actually close text box, close all that stuff. We have a subject in here, which has an empty array in the beginning. If we add a to-do, we grab that value, we push a value, and we emit the new array to our subject. Same for to-do, we grab the current value, we splice it instead of pushing it, we emit the new value. And now outside classes, just need to call those two functions to add or to move a to-do. And we have a getter function for to-dos, which returns our observable, which makes it pretty easy for our homepage to use this. So let's see this in action. I'm now just gonna replace everything we had in here. So let's see. We are now using a to-dos observable. We use our state service. And the only connection we need is this to-dos equals this state service to-dos. Now, I'm not using this as a function. If we define it with get, it is basically a getter for a value in here. You could also have a function to return that, but I just wanted to do something cool. Adding and removing a to-do is now just about calling this state service to add something, to remove something. We don't have to worry about updating our source because we're already using the observable. And if we now put in the right code within our view and use the async pipe from Angular for our iteration here, we will always get the latest items. So the test. There we go. The list extends. If I click on something, it will be removed because I'm accessing the index, and every item on click will call remove. And we don't have to worry about the rest of the state. And I think this is like the most, the shortest, the easiest approach to handling state with a subject. It works great if you're working with a database, if you're working with a ready state of something. It is the same observable pattern that you use when making API calls. So it is really, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to handle the state in your application. Yes, you can introduce a state library like ngxs or other libraries. There are tons of great libraries by now. But if you feel like you have a somewhat small or medium-sized application and don't want to get into something new, don't feel bad about not using a library like that. I really haven't used a library like that in most of the projects, I think, and always went fine with this approach. And I've seen other good developers write about that as well, that they were usually able to replicate everything they needed in terms of state management using observables. So, end of the story. This is a super simple approach. If you also want to put the idea from before about sending data back from one page to another, you could also do this with a state service now. So you're on a child page, you set some specific data to a service, and on the parent page you then read the data. Either you're already connected through the subject or you just read it. Really, there are tons of ways to handle this back pattern. Also, of course, for forward navigation, but for that I would recommend the patterns that we've seen in the previous video, either sending the object or better having the wildcard in the ID. And with that, I think we've covered most of the basic Angular Ionic topics for passing data around in your application. Alright, and that's it for our mini two-part series about handling data in your Ionic application. I hope I covered all of the most basic examples like routing, route params, child routes, modals, all of these things which are really essential to building Ionic applications. If there's anything I missed, please leave a comment below and I'm happy to create a third part of this video. Or if there's anything more advanced that you would like to see, feel free to leave a comment. And of course, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did so, click a like and stay subscribed for more Ionic videos coming every week. I hope you will have a great week. And with that, I hope to catch you next week like always. So happy coding, Simon.